So let me tell you about this eerie encounter I had one autumn. Our small town was always picturesque during fall, with the leaves turning fiery red and golden yellow. It's the perfect season for ghost stories and cozy campfires, right? But that year, fall took a dark turn, and I found myself in the middle of a real-life horror story. One involving a spine-chilling encounter with a total stranger. It all started with a leisurely walk along a winding road that led to the outskirts of town. The air was crisp, and the fallen leaves crunched underfoot, painting a beautiful but slightly eerie scene. As I strolled deeper into the woods, I noticed a run-down cabin almost hidden by creeping vines and tangled branches. My curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to check it out. The cabin's creaky front door let out a moan as I pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit, musty interior. Sunlight filtered through the cracked windows, casting a surreal, dusty glow. The place reeked of long-forgotten memories, and I couldn't help but feel the weight of decades of abandonment. I ventured further inside, my steps cautious to avoid the groaning floorboards. The cabin was like a time capsule, with old, moth-eaten furniture, faded photographs, and a beaten-up piano in the corner. It felt like a place that time had left behind. While snooping around, I stumbled upon a stack of aged newspapers on a rickety table. They all dated back to a single week in 1978. One headline in particular grabbed my attention: "Mysterious Disappearances Plague Town." The article was haunting, documenting a series of unexplained vanishings that had occurred nearly 50 years ago. As I read on, a creaking sound from a room in the back of the cabin startled me. I inched toward the door, heart racing, and that's when I saw him, the stranger who'd been living in this abandoned place. He was a wiry and wild-looking man with unkempt hair and eyes that darted around frantically. His clothes were tattered, and he gripped a rusty knife with trembling hands. The sense of unease was palpable, and I had no idea what to expect next. Before I could react, he began to speak. His voice was shaky as he told me that he'd been hiding from something malevolent that had haunted our town for years. He said this entity had taken his family, and he'd been living in isolation in that cabin, surviving on meager supplies while fearing that the malevolent presence would return. As he recounted his story, I couldn't help but wonder whether it was a tale spun from madness, or if there was some horrifying truth behind his words. His story left me more confused than ever, and I didn't know if I should believe him or run out of that cabin and seek help from the authorities. But as I pondered my next move, the man's anxiety grew, and he pleaded with me not to leave. He said that this malevolent entity could sense when someone got close to uncovering its secrets, and if I left, it would find him. His desperate cries sent shivers down my spine. I decided to make a hasty retreat, backing away from the man and leaving the cabin behind. The cool autumn air outside felt like a breath of fresh air, and I ran back to town as fast as I could. I reported the encounter to the local authorities, and they launched an investigation into the man and the mysterious disappearances that had plagued our town for decades. But when they arrived at the cabin, it was empty. The man had disappeared, leaving behind only the remnants of his lonely existence. To this day, the man's tale and the entity he spoke of remain a mystery. Was he a victim of his own paranoia, or did he truly come face to face with something sinister in those woods? The encounter still haunts me, and I can't help but wonder if there was some truth behind his frantic pleas and wild eyes, creating a real-life horror story that unfolded in the quiet autumn woods of our town. The setting sun cast an eerie orange glow over the sprawling cornfield as I arrived at the haunted harvest corn maze. It was the ideal way to spend a crisp autumn evening, and my friends and I had been eagerly awaiting this haunted attraction for weeks. Little did I know that this experience would soon turn into a nightmarish encounter with a stranger who lurked in the twisted labyrinth of the corn. As we entered the maze, the rustling corn stalks whispered secrets in the wind, creating an atmosphere filled with anticipation and dread. The flickering lanterns illuminated our path, casting long, ominous shadows. The maze was ingeniously designed, winding through the fields with countless dead ends and hidden horrors. My friends and I navigated the maze with a mixture of excitement and unease, and the tension grew as we encountered actors dressed as ghouls, zombies, and other creatures of the night. They leaped from the shadows, sending us into fits of nervous laughter. It was the perfect blend of thrills and chills. However, as we ventured deeper into the maze, the atmosphere grew increasingly sinister. The actors became more convincing, their performances more unsettling. The air was filled with chilling moans, eerie whispers, and distant, ghostly laughter. The corn seemed to close in on us, and the maze felt like an otherworldly trap. It was during one of our moments of nervous laughter that I spotted him, a man who stood out amidst the actors. He was not in costume, but dressed in ragged clothes and a tattered hat. His eyes were wide, almost wild, and his gaze locked onto me with a disturbing intensity. My friends and I shared a glance of unease, but we dismissed it as part of the immersive experience. The stranger, however, didn't seem to be an actor. He made no attempt to frighten us or engage in the spooky antics. Instead, he continued to watch me, his presence growing more unnerving by the minute. As we moved further into the maze, the stranger persisted, maintaining a certain distance but never letting us out of his sight. The unsettling realization dawned on us that he was not part of the attraction. Panic bubbled within me, and I struggled to maintain composure. We decided to leave the maze and alert the staff, but the corn had other plans. The path grew increasingly confusing, the shadows more disorienting. The lanterns flickered ominously, and the disconcerting sounds of the maze seemed to echo in all directions. We had lost our way. With each passing moment, the stranger drew closer, his presence an ever-increasing menace. His wild eyes now seemed malevolent, and his movements were unpredictable. Fear settled in our hearts, and the chilling thought that we were being stalked in the maze took hold. Desperation set in, and we made a hasty decision to cut through the corn stalks in an attempt to escape the maze. The stranger's figure was now dangerously close, and the ominous atmosphere in the maze seemed to align with his dark intent. Just as we were about to break free from the corn, the stranger lunged at us, his ragged form colliding with mine. Panic and adrenaline coursed through me as we grappled in the dark. His grip was like iron, his breath hot against my ear, and the stench of desperation filled the air. I could hear my friends shouting for help as the struggle continued, but the corn seemed to swallow their cries. The stranger's intent was clear. He sought to overpower me, to drag me deeper into the maze, away from the prying eyes of my companions. It was a battle of wills, and as the seconds ticked by, I realized I had to act swiftly. With a surge of strength, I managed to break free and scramble to my feet. I ran as if my life depended on it, following the sounds of my friends' voices. We eventually emerged from the maze, breathless and shaken, and alerted the staff to the stranger who had attacked. But by the time they investigated, the man had vanished into the cornfield, leaving behind only an unsettling memory. The haunted harvest corn maze, once an attraction filled with spooky fun, had transformed into a setting for a real-life horror story. The encounter with the stranger had shaken us to our core, a reminder that sometimes, in the midst of eerie autumn adventures, we may encounter something far more terrifying than the supernatural scares we had come to experience. The crisp autumn air hung heavy in the woods as I embarked on a solitary hike. I've always enjoyed the serenity of the season, so I decided to explore a nearby forest known for its fall beauty. But what was intended to be a peaceful day would soon turn into a terrifying encounter with a stranger who lurked among the fallen leaves. As I ventured deeper into the woods, following a well-worn trail, I couldn't ignore the growing sense of unease. The forest's usual background noise, bird songs and rustling leaves, had quieted to an unsettling stillness. It was as if nature itself had taken a pause, waiting for something to happen. A voice in my head whispered for me to turn back, to follow my instincts. but my curiosity urged me forward. The unknown beckoned, and I couldn't resist its pull. The trail eventually led me to a small clearing where an old and neglected cabin stood. Its creaking door and aged exterior hinted at decades of abandonment. My curiosity piqued. I couldn't resist exploring the interior. The cabin was a time capsule. Dust-covered furniture lay beneath tattered sheets, and the air was thick with the weight of history. I discovered a stack of old journals, filled with entries from a family who had lived here long ago. They chronicled their daily lives and the strange occurrences they believed to be supernatural: whispers in the night, shadows in the woods, and an ominous figure watching from the darkness. The entries grew more erratic, hinting at an unspoken malevolence that seemed to be tied to the forest itself. The tales should have served as a warning, but my curiosity only deepened. As the sun began to sink below the trees, I decided to leave the cabin behind and retrace my steps. That's when I heard it, a haunting melody that seemed to emanate from the very heart of the forest. It was a beautiful but eerie tune, and it pulled me forward. The music led me to a small clearing where a man stood playing a weathered violin. His appearance was unusual, with wild hair and tattered clothes. He continued to play, and with each note, the forest seemed to respond, as if the very trees were entranced by the haunting melody. My hesitation wavered, caught between the enchantment of the music and the rising unease within me. The stranger's presence was unsettling, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something inexplicable about him. As I moved closer, the stranger abruptly stopped playing. He turned to face me, and his hollow, haunting eyes locked onto mine with a malevolent intensity. At that moment, dread washed over me, and I felt an overwhelming sense of danger. The stranger attacked suddenly, his fingers closing around my throat. Panic surged, and I fought for my life with everything I had. My cries for help echoed through the woods, but it seemed as if no one was close enough to hear. The struggle continued, and I could feel my vision growing dim. It was a battle for survival, and I knew I had to find the strength to break free. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, a group of hikers approached, drawn by my desperate pleas. The stranger, sensing their presence, released his grip and vanished into the woods. The hikers, concerned for my safety, called for help, and the police arrived to investigate the incident. Yet, their search for the mysterious stranger yielded no results. The encounter in the woods served as a chilling reminder that the natural world, even in its serene beauty, can conceal hidden dangers. That day in the forest, I came face to face with a dark, enigmatic stranger whose motives remain unknown, a real-life encounter that still haunts my memories.